wherever you are listening or watching Radio Afinju. The time is 5 p.m.
Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfíjù. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfíjù. Rédíò. Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo àfíjù. Lórí WhatsApp. Àfíjù. Instagram. Àfíjù. Facebook. Àfíjù. Lórí X. Àfíjù. Lórí YouTube. Àfíjù. Lórí TikTok. Àfíjù. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfíjù. Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfíjù. Rédíò. Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo àfíjù. Rédíò àfíjù. Rédíò àfíjù. Rédíò àfíjù.
Here on Doc on Radio, we are shining a light on why your well-being should always come first. From everyday health tips to deep medical insight, from nutrition to fitness, from top doctors to latest medical research, we've got it all. Bringing you expert advice, answering your burning questions, and helping you live a healthier and happier life. How cool is that? Join Pearl Durotoye every Monday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. only on Radio Afinju for Doc on Radio. Watch us live and follow Radio Afinju on Facebook and YouTube so you don't miss out. Because your health matters and great health is something you deserve.
Good evening. You're welcome to today's episode of Doc on Radio, your favorite radio health and wellness show. My name is Pearl Durotoye and I'm your host for today. Here on Doc on Radio, we talk about everything health, mental health, physical health. As long as your health and well-being is concerned, we're going to be talking about it here on the show. We're going to be talking about health issues, how to ensure that your body is functioning at its utmost capacity. Now, apart from me giving my own personal opinions on certain topics, we're still going to be having certain health professionals here on the show. I'm talking people who have held or who currently hold key positions in the health industry, people who are playing significant roles in the health industries, doctors, health practitioners, nurses, pharmacists, you name it. As long as they play key and significant role in the health industry, we are going to be inviting them here on the show to share from their wealth of knowledge. I'm talking about knowledge gained from years of experience, years of practice, and years of research. And today is not an exception because I am not alone today. I'm not alone in the studio today. We have decided to take it up a notch. But before I get to that, if you're not already following us on social media, we are on Facebook, X, YouTube, all social media platforms at Radio Afinju. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss out on all our shows and program, and also contribute. We want to hear from you as well. If you have questions for our guests, do not hesitate to ask. You can throw your comments or your questions in the comment section, or you can call our studio line displayed currently on your screen. This is Doc on Radio with Pearl Durotoye. Last week, I talked about adhering to medical advice, adhering to medical instruction. You know, you've gone to the hospital, you've told the doctors what is wrong with you, they've diagnosed you, they've given you instructions to follow. How do you ensure that you don't relapse? How do you ensure that that problem that took you to the hospital doesn't take you back there? That was what I touched on on this show last week. Today, however, it's a different ball game entirely, as I'm starting a 5-part series on managing chronic conditions. Managing chronic conditions, all those health conditions. Some of them are widely known, and some it is when they've gotten critical that they begin to show signs and symptoms. What are these conditions? How do you manage them? And we're going to be starting with one very popular health condition. Remember, I said I'm not going to be doing this alone today. I have a special guest with me in the studio. He's a public health physician, an epidemiologist, an environmentalist, and even more importantly, a key player in the health industry. Over 35 years of practice in the health industry. He knows his onions. He's a professional. So everything he's telling you today, I don't want you to take it with a pinch of salt, because he's speaking from his wealth of knowledge and experience. And I know by this time you're already wondering, who is this wonderful person that I have with me here in the studio? Well, don't go anywhere, because once I come back from this break, Doc on Radio is going to be back, and I'm going to introduce you to my guest for today. So don't go anywhere. I'm still Pearl, and this is still Doc on Radio Afinju.
For inspiring stories, real talk, from health and wellness to career and relationship, we explore it all. Meet your host, the Radio Gem, and other women on Women Corner every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m., where sisterhood meets support. It promises to elevate your mind, and most importantly, it's gonna be fun. Follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, all at Radio Afinju. Keep a date with us on Women Corner every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m.
on Radio Afinju.
You're welcome back from that break. It's still Doc on Radio here at Radio Afinju, the radio station with an impeccable dimension to broadcasting. And if you're just joining, this is your radio health and wellness show. Here we're going to be sharing expert health advice, wellness tips, and practical solutions to everyday health challenges. Before I went on that break, I mentioned that I have a special guest with me in the studio. But before I introduce our guest, I hope you've not forgotten our slogan. We have a slogan on this show, which is Doc on Radio, Wellness Made Easy. When you hear Doc on Radio, you say Wellness Made Easy. Or when you hear Wellness Made Easy, you say Doc on Radio. This just points to the fact that everything we do here is for your well-being, and we're trying to simplify common and popular health challenges so that even a layman can understand them. So again, I have a special guest with me in the studio. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Pearl.
How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Well, I know I'm fine. I'm doing great. Good to have you here on the show, despite the short notice. It's an honor.
Pleasure.
It's an honor to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
I know I have said a couple of things, but I'm sure it is from limited knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I would love you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, good afternoon, listeners. I'm Dr. Adeni Samuel Ogini. I retired as a civil servant from the service of Osun State last year. I was and I still am, of course, the pioneer executive secretary of Osun Health Insurance Agency. I established the scheme and was the ES for 5 years before I retired last year. And I'm a public health physician by training, first a medical doctor, and then I specialized in public health. I'm a fellow of the World Health Organization, and I'm also a fellow of the World Health Federation. And of course, I'm an epidemiologist and an environmentalist, because my PhD also is in ecology and environmental science. Wow. So, and those are the things I do now. I practice, of course, I've been practicing medicine, so I have a private hospital where I practice my medicine. Okay. And I lecture at the university also. I'm a lecturer at the Redeemers University. I teach public health.
Okay, that's beautiful. I mean, despite retirement, you're still in active service.
Very active, thank you.
Wonderful, good to have you here.
Thank you.
On the show, sir. So today we are discussing managing chronic health conditions, and I would like to start with one of the most popular health conditions that people face even without knowing it. Most times, for most people, it is when it has gotten to the critical stage that is when they start to seek medical health, which should not be so, because if you remember a few episodes back, I mentioned that it is essential that we carry out preventive practices. We shouldn't wait until things have gotten out of hand or until it is an emergency case before you seek medical help. There are things you can do by yourself to ensure that, in as much as sometimes there are emergencies can arise, because you can still do everything and one or two things will still come up, you try your own possible best to ensure that you're minimizing the risk of maybe falling sick or falling victim of one or two sicknesses. So what topic are we discussing today? We are discussing hypertension. Ṣé nǹkan làwọn Yorùbá ń pè ní jẹjẹrẹ mi?
Ẹ̀jẹ̀ ríru.
Ẹ̀jẹ̀ ríru, thank you. That's high blood pressure.
High blood pressure, that's right.
Okay, yes. So ẹ̀jẹ̀ ríru, and sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ẹ̀jẹ̀ ríru. We are discussing hypertension today. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about hypertension. In fact, people have self-diagnosed other people of hypertension. And it's not just even in movies. I've seen in movies, when somebody is acting a certain way, they'll say, Emma of hypertension, and stuff like that. But what really is hypertension? Let's have a more professional. Let's hear from a professional now.
Thank you very much, Pearl. Hypertension, simply defined, is an increase in the pressure with which the blood is pumped within the arterial vessels. We have the arteries, we have the veins. The arteries are the ones that take the blood away from the heart to other parts of the body, and then the veins return the blood to the heart for oxygenation. Now, what happens, when there is hypertension is that the pressure that the blood is, pumped within, the heart pumps the blood, but the pressure in the arteries with which the blood is pumped is high. When it becomes high, then you say it is high blood pressure. Okay. Usually there is a pressure that is expected. That's normal. Yeah, that's normal. Where the pump, the heart pumps with that pressure, and as it pumps with that pressure, the blood goes through the entire, vessels, with that pressure. But the moment it's increasing, then it begins to work on on the wall of the arteries that's carrying the vein, and that's where issues begin to happen. Let me just stop at that. So it's just increase in the hypertension is increase in the pressure with which the blood is pumped in the arterial vessels, in the blood.
Okay, thank you, sir. But are there types of hypertension, or is it just a basic understanding of what it is?
It can be classified as primary or secondary. Primary hypertension is essential hypertension. They call it primary because it's of idiopathic origin. Idiopathic means that you cannot really place your hand on a particular causative agent, that this is what is causing it. You understand? But it develops. It's idiopathic, right? Yes. But then it's called primary because it just develops. You didn't know exactly what's responsible for it. And they call it essential, of course, for the same reason that you see you can't really say it's because of this or that it happened, not a particular causative agent. But we know that there are some, factors that are, also associated, attributable to development of primary hypertension. And there is secondary hypertension where it's actually as a result of the disease of certain organs in the body. In the cases where you have some endocrine glands, like the thyroid gland, like the adrenal gland, or above the kidney, when these ones are secreting excessively, you have hyperthyroidism. It results in high blood pressure. If you have a tumor in the adrenal gland, that is called you have the like a pheochromocytoma. It's a kind of tumor that grows within the adrenal gland, and then it begins to secrete a lot of ACT into the blood, the adrenaline into the blood, and that increases the the pressure with which blood is pumped in the vessels. So these conditions can result. Aside from that, diabetes can result in hypertension in some cases, and then some liver conditions also can result in hypertension. Some renal conditions can result in hypertension. So there are quite a lot of
disease of other organs in the body that can, result in hypertension. You understand? Those are secondary hypertension. So the primary one is the one that is, it's called essential. It is genetic. It could be genetic. It could be familial. It runs in families. So if parents, whether you're both parents or one of your parents had hypertension, you could also develop it because it's genetic and it can be familial also. So these are the essential and the secondary hypertension. That's the classification.
Okay. Yeah. Are there other causes of hypertension aside the secondary?
Fine. The causes of primary, not really causes now. We're looking at attributable, the risk factors. Now, the risk factors for hypertension, can start beginning from, your lifestyle. If you have a sedentary lifestyle where, you don't move around, we call that physical inactivity. If there's physical inactivity, you can definitely, you are accumulating some, fat in your body. You are not burning the fat. Then you are definitely a candidate for high blood pressure. Because over the years, if you do that over a period, you are likely going to become, obese. And then obesity, of course, is going to begin to cause a lot of pressure, like on the blood vessels, on the heart itself, to pump the blood, and it begins to pump with the high blood pressure. So that's one. So physical inactivity is one risk factor. Aside from physical inactivity, unhealthy diets. When we say unhealthy diets, it's quite common now. People take a lot of fast foods. You take processed foods. You take sugar-sweetened beverages. And I was at the first and the second national, dialogue on sugar-sweetened beverages in Nigeria. I am an advocate of, heavy taxes on sugar-sweetened beverages like Coca-Cola, Fanta, all of them, all the sugar-sweetened beverages, all these, energy drinks and things, they're really causing a lot of problems. So unhealthy diet, beginning from fast food, processed foods, and then all these sugar-sweetened beverages, all these energy drinks and what have you, all of them have their own, impact. Of course, they play a role in the development of high blood pressure. Aside from unhealthy diets and physical inactivity, we also have the use of tobacco. The use of tobacco, whether you are chewing tobacco or you are smoking tobacco, whatever manner of use you put tobacco to, it has the probability of increasing your blood pressure. And then, people smoke, all kinds of things that they do with tobacco. But that also is one risk factor. And then alcohol is also another risk factor. So these are the four, major risk factors, really. Physical inactivities, unhealthy diets, use of alcohol, and, tobacco. They can, result in, development of hypertension. Yeah.
On the tobacco use, especially on the inhaling, does it only affect people who are actively inhaling it or passively onto others who live around them as well?
Yeah. But we talk about passive smoking and secondhand smoking. Secondhand smoking can sometimes be even more dangerous than, it can be because particularly depending on the makeup of the person that's inhaling the smoke, the secondhand smoke, So whether they are young people, of course, you know what that means. It's going to be much more devastating when a young person is inhaling secondhand smoke, from being, maybe you are the child of a smoker, smoking mother or father or what have you. So secondhand smoke is very bad also. It's just as bad as, so that's why there's a lot of campaign that's going on that people should stop public smoking, and then even people who are parents and things should not smoke, within the environment of their children, because secondhand cigarette smoking is as bad as that. When you inhale, the cigarette smoke that's exhaled by a smoker, of course, you are also liable. So that's part of the
heavy taxes should be placed on tobacco products as well.
We've been advocating for that. I was in India, in 2016. I was in Kampala in Uganda in 2017. All we are doing is canvassing. Uganda has the highest, they have the most strict, the strictest rule against smoking. They have a 100% smoke-free law in Uganda. So I was one of the team that went to do an assessment of the compliance in their hospitality centers, their bars, their hotels, and other places. We went to do the compliance with the 100%, smoking rule. And then, of course, we found some gaps in there, which we have suggested to the government, how they can improve, in ensuring that people comply with the 100% smoke-free law. We are also doing that in Nigeria. In Osun State, we are one of the foremost states that actually passed the, no smoking in public places law. I was also, instrumental to that when I was the chairman of Nigerian Medical Association. I worked together with Nigerian Heart Foundation to get that law enacted in Osun State here. So there is a law against public smoking in Osun State. Enforcement and compliance is just some of the things that, So we're still continuing with the advocacy. We're continuing with, pressing for stricter measures to be placed on that so that people will be, desist from the art because it's quite dangerous. Yeah, it's deleterious to their health.
Thank you so much for your contribution to society. Because even aside from actively canvassing for laws that prevent people from smoking publicly, it also puts a pressure on the health sector.
Yeah.
Yes, because there will be increased rising.
Oh Lord, there's lots of it. Yes, of course. When the people smoke a lot, and whether themselves, who are the primary smokers or the second smokers, they are liable to chronic obstructive respiratory diseases. They are liable to all kinds of other, conditions of the heart and the lungs, which is the thrust of the heart. It places a heavy burden on the health sector through, and of course now with dwindling economy. It's like you are doing that and then you're almost committing suicide when you do that because yes, you won't have the money to take care of yourself, and then of course the health facilities themselves are experiencing a lot of downtime now, so many of the equipments are not there to do things in the hospitals, so and then many of the doctors are not also around, except for older people like us who have decided to stay. People are jackpying, so if you continue with bad habits and then you come down with the conditions that are complications, then you will be on your own because the health sector is not going to be there to. It's actually not really there now because we have lots of crises in the health sector in terms of manpower, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of many other things, even availability of medicines. So there are lots of issues. So it's better you stay healthy. And that's why I like your program. You say it's wellness, It's better you stay healthy than to start looking for cure
just
after
like
you
they
have
say,
contracted
prevention is
disease.
better than cure.
Correct. Prevention is better than that. That's why we are, specialists in preventive medicine. We call it preventive and social medicine.
I did a topic on that some weeks back.
I heard it in your introduction.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, sir. So now, what I want to know is what are the early symptoms to watch out for? How do you know you are at risk?
Really, that's a big one because hypertension is a silent killer.
Yes.
Silent killer because it doesn't come with any symptom. So because, not specific symptoms. So that's why you just wake up one morning and you feel you're tired and you're fatigued, or you say it's just because of,
stress.
it's just stress, and then it's nothing. You are not going to check. So the next morning you get up again, you are up and you're going about. You don't think that something is wrong. You didn't sleep very well last night. Some of those things those are early signs which people actually ignore. When your sleep is affected, you didn't sleep very well and you're not sleeping very well. We call that insomnia, inability to sleep well, and then you just, wave it away, And then, of course, sometimes you have headache, headache in the morning, and sometimes, again, during the night or, during the day, you have this headache. You say, it's because, maybe it's malaria, and then you are treating malaria also. And you are not really thinking about blood pressure in this case. And then, of course, sometimes you feel lightheaded. Sometimes you even feel like you're fainting. All of these are signs that come. Of course, by the time lightheadedness and fainting comes, it's already getting, to the point of you, really having complications coming up. But people don't really put these things to heart. That is why they say hypertension is a silent killer. Because if at the time you just discovered, I've not been able to sleep well in the last 2 days, let me go and check my blood pressure. Immediately they would see. If it is your blood pressure that's causing it, it will be known. So early diagnosis is very important. And early diagnosis can only be done when you have a high index of suspicion. That is, you are aware that if you are not sleeping well, you need to get your blood pressure checked. If you are feeling, you have headache in the morning, particularly when you have not done anything or you have headache, you should go and check your blood pressure. If you are feeling unnecessarily weak, like you're fatigued, you're just like your body is not really moving the way it ought to move, you should go and have your blood pressure checked. All of these things could just be indication of, hypertension that is brewing, that is coming up. So, and if you check them, they will tell you exactly what to do. So these are some of the early, symptoms of hypertension. Yeah.
But do you think why people don't seek medical help is because of fear of the unknown, or just because they do not have the funds to?
Yeah, there are many factors that are responsible for delay in seeking for medical care. One of it is, of course, poverty. That is unavailability of the funds. Then the other one is not poverty, it's just one's attitude. Some people are just nonchalant about their health. So it's a personal thing, and they don't care, and they will seek help very lately when it's already complicated. And then in some cases, it is there's a geographical accessibility where you already have it, but you don't have a place close by where you can get health care service. Some people live in places where the next hospital is quite a distance from where they are.
Yes.
So there's geographical inaccessibility, there is financial inaccessibility, and there is a personal attitude of nonchalance. These are some of the factors that actually delay people or prevent people from getting care early enough. Yeah.
Okay. But do you think there are ways people can manage it without seeking professional medical help?
Well, it's what you know that you manage. So how would you know what to manage when you have not known it? So until you have sought, help in the hospital and you are diagnosed, that's when you now know. Of course, the first line in the management of hypertension is not drugs. You don't use medicines to manage hypertension at the first line. It is, lifestyle changes. We suggest lifestyle modifications because we'll have taken your history, and then we've seen in your history some of the factors that may be responsible. And so the first thing we tell you to do is all of those modifiable factors, if they're in your life, we tell you, let's start with a lifestyle modification. And then after a few weeks on lifestyle modification, or months, depending on how you respond, if you do not respond to that adequately, then we start with the other, medicines. And these medicines that we use in hypertension are in levels, they are in grades, they are in different categories. And then we use them, introduce them one after the other based on the peculiarity of the patient that we are seeing. Yeah. So that's how it is.
Okay. What do you think of more often than should be? In a couple of cases, I've seen all these. I don't know if I should call them traditional medicines that are being sold around, and these medicines are being projected to cure a couple of health conditions. Some of which even without a diagnosis, and then you see people buying them because I know we mentioned that funds might be an issue, but these drugs are still being bought with money. So what do you think?
Ignorance. I forgot to talk about ignorance. So ignorance is one of the things that actually make people not seek help on time, and then they go to the wrong places. Now, these medicines that are all over the place, they tell you there are some agbos, there are some this and that. I do not have confidence in them because I've seen so many cases of patients who refuse to come for medical checkup because, they've been diagnosed as hypertensive, they've used their drugs for a while, and somebody tells them, there's this native thing that you can use, and so they stay off their drugs. By the time they come, they either come having developed stroke, or they come with very severe complications of hypertension because their blood pressure at that time is almost shooting, above the roof. You understand? So, and then there are some that also buy all of these products. They call them all kinds of products, forever living product, this product, that product. They say they are supplements and they're good for blood pressure and good for diabetes. But you use them and they will stop. And these drugs are even more expensive than the ones that you get in the hospital. But because they tell them all kinds of things, this one would take care of so many 100 diseases and everything.
Or maybe
so
there are
they
people
go,
they heard it worked for.
So they go and they get this. And many times, in fact, diabetic patients, I've had several patients come with diabetic ketoacidosis. They come in coma because they refused to take their regular drugs and they took this, supplements, hoping that it's going to bring down the blood sugar, bring down the blood pressure, and at the end of the day, they develop complications. And most of the time, they do not have the money in the wherewithal to take care of the complications. So you know what happens thereafter? It's either they are maimed permanently or they die. So it is actually ignorance that, actually encourages people to do that. And I would advise the public not to at all, take to that, but to go to the hospital so that you can get proper care and you can be given proper medicine. There are some medicines, some leaves, some herbs, some, roots and shoots that also can reduce blood pressure. But again, I've seen somebody take that and collapse because the measure is the problem. How much of this are you going to measure for somebody that has this level of hypertension? Do you understand? So because all of those things are not available, you can either overdo or you underdo, either of which is very dangerous. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your contribution. It has been very enlightening. We will be going on a very short break now. Don't forget, it's still Doc on Radio, your radio health and wellness show, and I am with Dr. Adeniyi Ogini.
Correct. Yeah,
right.
Well pronounced.
Okay, so we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
On Radio, we are shining a light on why your well-being should always come first. From everyday health tips to deep medical insight, from nutrition to fitness, from top doctors to latest medical research, we've got it all. Bringing you expert advice, answering your burning questions, and helping you live a healthier and happier life. How cool is that? Join Pearl Durotoye every Monday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. only on Radio Afinju for Doc on Radio. Watch us live and follow Radio Afinju on Facebook and YouTube so you don't miss out. Because your health matters and great health is something you deserve.
You're welcome back from that break. It's still Doc on Radio, Wellness Made Easy here on Radio Afinju. I am still Pearl with our wonderful guest, Dr. Adeniyi, here in the studio. And if you're just joining us, we're talking about hypertension. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about hypertension. It is popularly known as the silent killer because most of the time you don't know you have it until you do seek medical help. So you might just be walking around, you think you are healthy, you're 100% because you're not seeing any signs or any symptoms. Meanwhile, your life is remaining probably like 10%. so you have to really pay attention. And doctor has been he has contributed so much, even things that I couldn't find online while I was doing my own research. I've known so much about it. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, sir. My next question. Well, before I say that, if you have any questions, you can call in on the show on our studio line 0.9 091 2111 1115 091 2111 1115. If you have questions about this topic for our guest, feel free to call in. So, doctor, earlier when we're talking about lifestyle, we mentioned nutrition or diet, right? So,
unhealthy diet.
Yeah, unhealthy diet. But my question now is that, when let's use diabetes for instance. We know sometimes in diabetes they talk about, okay, if you're going to when it comes to diet, you have to reduce your sugar intake for diabetes. But is there such thing in hypertension as well?
Oh, yes. We tell people to reduce their salt intake. That's part of the lifestyle modification that we suggest when we start seeing you developing, blood pressure. The blood pressure is actually, in a range between 90/60 to 140/90. Now, the 90/60 is the lower border of normal. 140/90 is the upper border of normal. They call that borderline hypertension in some classifications. There are several classifications of hypertension, but I use the World Health Organization classification, and that's where we stop at 140/90. Now, when you see your blood pressure going towards 140/90, you're 135/90, you're 140/90, we start telling you you are at risk of developing hypertension. So we start probing into your lifestyle, particularly your diet. How much of salt do you take? Do you add salt? Do you have to add salt most of the time, to your food when you're eating it?
Yep.
And if you do that, then that's a risky thing. So the first advice we tell them is low salt diet, just like we tell diabetic patient, low carbohydrate, and then you reduce your sugar intake. The same thing we say to the hypertensive patient, reduce your salt. That's the number one. And then don't, take all of these processed foods, the fast foods and everything. They are good. Of course, the salt and the cholesterol, that's salt and lipids. Those are the two things that are high in, those fast foods and processed foods and things. So, and these are contributory. They have been implicated in development of hypertension. So we tell them, reduce on your processed food, reduce on your salt, eat your natural thing, the kind of things that we eat, the eba and amala and obewedu and begiri and things like that, and then don't put more salt in them.
Okay.
So that's part of the advice that we give to hypertensive patients, just like they tell the diabetic patient to reduce their sugar.
I've heard a couple of times as well, especially when this issue of salt intake is brought up. A lot of people are like, oh, they don't add salt to their meals, but they use only Maggi. And I've heard on several occasions that Maggi even has even more salt content than the normal salt
that is true. Those seasonings, many of the seasonings, it's not just Maggi.
Yeah.
There are so many of the others. We start mentioning them, Ajinomoto, or just seasonings. All of these seasonings that they use, they're also salts. They're salty. You understand? Aside from table salt, which is just sodium chloride, there are so many other, salt is not just sodium chloride. There are so many other salts that are contained in those, seasonings. So we advise people to use them sparingly. Sparingly, because they also can be attributable to development of blood pressure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. But how often should we check our blood pressure?
Well, it depends. If you a young person and you don't have any of those diseases that I said can cause secondary hypertension.
Okay.
You don't have the endocrine disorders and things. So you may not be checking unless, of course, when you are going to school and then they do a preschool
compulsory
check and
health
things
checks.
like that.
Yes.
But by the time you are 30, if you are a son or daughter of parents that are hypertensive, then you are a candidate, because one of the attributing factors is genetics, right? So you will need to start checking. You check your blood pressure once in 2 months, once in 3 months, as a young person, 30, and growing.
Yeah.
If you get to the age of 40 and you are, both your parents are hypertensive, then it's good you begin to do your blood pressure monthly. Yes, at the age of, some people, of course, by between 30 and 40, they develop hypertension, essential hypertension. That's the primary one I told you about, as a result of the genetic, makeup that they have, because their parents had it. You understand? Aside from this, there are also, personalities. The people who have aggressive personalities and people have, these very quiet tendencies. People, each of them at the two extremes of personalities, A and D, they can also, develop hypertension. So yes, of course, there are many, papers on that your personality can also be an attributable factor. Those are excessively aggressive, can easily develop that. And then those are, are extremely quiet and things like that. So both, extremes are not just too good, because there are also risk factors for developing hypertension. So that's like, you need to check if you have that kind of personality. Of course, you need to check your blood pressure. At the age of 40, we'll advise just once in a month will be okay. You don't need to do that. But if you are now diagnosed as hypertensive and you are on medications, of course, your doctor will either give you a 2-week appointment or they'll give you a 1-month appointment. And it's just good enough for you to follow those appointments. And some people advocate that you should do home blood pressure measuring. That you do home blood pressure measurements, and I am not an advocate of that.
Okay.
And the reason I'm not an advocate of that is that I've seen many patients wake up in the morning, do blood pressure, afternoon, do blood pressure, night, you do blood pressure. In fact, some of them do it 5-6 times in a day. Now that itself causes anxiety, which raises the blood pressure. So it does not allow good blood pressure control. I've said this at several conferences. I was in India also at the World Heart Federation conference, and I told them at the cardiology conference, I told them, of course, in some other climes they will tell you, okay, you should do it home blood pressure measuring.
Yeah.
In Europe, in America, people do that, and it has helped to a large extent. But here, from my own practice and from my own experience, I know that it has caused more harm than good. Some of the home blood pressure measurement machine that they are using are faulty. And so you do it, and then it tells you 200 over 150. And then the person is almost dead before he gets to the hospital. And then you do the blood pressure in the hospital, it is 140 over 85. And then you are telling your friends, oh, cool down, madam, this thing has given me this. It's like I'm going to develop stroke, and it gives anxiety. So my own, advice is that you don't, in fact, I don't advise home blood pressure measurement. If you start feeling these, like you're feeling giddy, you're feeling all of these early symptoms we talked about, you're not sleeping properly, you're having persistent headache,
fainting,
and then you are feeling weak, and then
tiredness.
tiredness and things, go to the hospital and check your blood pressure. And go to a place where you know that the people know what they are doing. Because there are other places you go to, and somebody does your blood pressure is 130 over 80. Madam, you're almost dying. This one is 130, 80. It's very high, which is not true. You understand? So again, there is a need for you to know where you're going to get medical care, make sure they know what they're doing, and check your blood pressure there. Home blood pressure measurement, I don't support. But some people, of course, for people who can have good equipment, good machines, they check their machines from time to time, they change their batteries from time to time, because those digital blood pressure machines, the worse or the lower the quality of the batteries, the higher the probability of you getting inaccurate measurements. Do you understand?
Yes.
And all of this will just build anxiety, or it can give a false confidence. You understand? And if the thing is bad and it's just giving you this persistently low thing,
You
when
think
it's high,
all is
you
well.
think everything is well until once you just develop stroke, and there's with all of this blood pressure measurement, everything seems normal. So these are some of the things that I tell people: check your blood pressure when you have these symptoms. Go to the hospital. Don't do it at home.
Okay.
I'm not saying that you should not have a blood pressure measuring machine at home, but I tell my patients, if you're going to measure it. If you're on 2 weeks medication, once in 2 weeks or once in a month, and then if, however, you develop some unusual signs, like all of these things we've talked about, then you can do it, and then you can get your doctor to know, well, this was how I felt, and I did my blood pressure, this is what it's reading. What should I do? And then the doctor will tell you, oh, you need to come to the hospital, let's validate this before we tell you what to do. Or something, okay, do this, do that. Now we are in the digital world. And then you can always get your doctor. But don't keep doing it at home. And then you are doing blood pressure.
Or check-ins
as if you are eating
for results
your food.
online as well.
Oh, that's something else.
Okay. Do you think old people are more prone to...
Oh, yes. Age is a factor. Age, the older you get, the likely the probability of developing hypertension.
Even if you have no history of it.
Even if you have no history, if your father, your mother isn't, the older you get, if you live long enough, you are getting to 80, 90, some of those things just come, because age is also a relative factor. And some people, some climes also, ethnicity has been found. There are so many factors that are shifted, some, ethnic groups have it more easily than others and things like that, But these are all far-fetched. But we talk about for the interest of the public,
Yes.
These are the information that they need to know.
Okay.
That, of course, age, the higher you go, the higher the tendency for you to develop hypertension. And then, of course, we start managing it.
Yeah.
Those are some of the geriatric conditions that we manage for geriatric patients.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it also affect? Is there a disparity in how it affects men and women?
Yeah, they've done, some studies, but the studies are not actually agreeing. In some, places, depending on the nature of the work, because of whether they are males or females, depending on the nature of the work, they have this blood pressure thing. But ordinarily, there's a propensity, for females than males, and that's associated with
especially during pregnancy, right?
not just pregnancy,
Okay.
associated with the body mass in most cases.
Okay.
The higher the body mass index, the higher the tendency to have blood pressure. And then we know that women, are more at risk of having, high body mass index. That's maybe they are obese, they're either overweight or they are obese. Of course, accumulation of fats and other things during pregnancy, in successive pregnancies, you never really lose the weight that you have added during pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then, if you now
another
have another one in quick succession, before you know it, you are obese and overweight, and there's a risk factor for hypertension as well. So I think there's a more female propensity than male.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. You've heard it all. I don't think there's anything more to add. But before I ask about the final few questions, because of our time, there are some myths and facts that I want Doctor to debunk for us today. I know and I've mentioned it earlier. Some of them are picked up for maybe people just saying it. At least the one I know I've heard most times is in movies. They say ilé ìtẹ́ ronú báyìí ẹ bá fẹ́ fún yẹn hypertension nìyẹn. But we really don't know how true that is. Does that contribute to hypertension?
Well, yes. When you when you think too much, when it affects your sleep, and as it affects your sleep, you are moving towards, developing hypertension. So the thinking in itself is not, the one that actually causes that. But then thinking is also associated with many things, with the release of certain, hormones in the body, which also are, we call it hypertogenic. That means they have the tendency to increase your blood pressure and give you hypertension. So excessive thinking, yes, of course, in many cases could also result in that. And when you say they are thinking, what it means is that, they are easily disturbed. I talked about personality.
Yes.
They are easily disturbed, and then they are engaged in, this kind of thinking that, not hopeful thinking. When you are hopeful thinking, you are not likely going to develop, hypertension. But when it is, you are thinking of the negative, and it's like you are giving up, you are, seeing no solution.
Yeah.
You are not seeing positive things. And then you are just seeing everything negative. They have the way of, increasing the tension in your body, preventing you from sleeping, increasing your blood pressure.
Yeah.
And of course, they could even lead to other things, mental illnesses, psychosis and what have you.
Yeah.
Like I said, depending on what side of the personality divide you belong to.
Okay. I have another statement here to debunk, and which is, if you take your hypertension medications regularly, you can eat whatever you want.
That is not true.
Okay.
That is not true. Just like we said, prevention is better than cure. If you take your hypertension drugs regularly, you can eat whatever. It's just like you are pouring water on. You are trying to mop up the floor while some other person is. There's a tap that's running, right?
Yes.
The tap is running. It's flooded. The floor is flooded, and then you are trying to stop that, and then somebody is mopping, and then you are still pouring the water. So what are you going to get? You're not going to get any results. So that is exactly that picture. So if you are taking your hypertension drugs normally, you cannot just eat anything you want to eat. I told you initially that the first step in the management of hypertension is lifestyle modification. So one of those things is you change, whether you are a sedentary person, you start engaging in physical activity. If you smoke, you reduce your smoking, you stop smoking. If you drink, you stop that. And then if you eat nonsense, junk food, you stop it. So Don't say that because you are taking your drugs, you can take salt, you can, eat nonsense, you can continue to drink and smoke, you will die. Definitely.
Okay, so one final myth to debunk because of our time, which is people with hypertension should avoid physical activity to avoid putting stress on the heart.
Oh, no, that is also not right.
Okay.
However, there is a level of
physical
activity that is prescribed depending on the person, depending on the level of the blood pressure, and depending on so many other factors. The important thing is that physical activity itself helps to maintain a healthy cardiovascular system.
Yeah.
So a healthy circulation, right? But then it will be prescribed. The commonly prescribed physical activity we say is brisk walking, not running, not jogging, not just walking slowly, but brisk walking for between 40 and 45 minutes, 3 days in a week. It will cause you to sweat. It will give you healthy cardiovascular system. You do that brisk walking.
Yes.
You are not jogging, you are not running, but you are walking, briskly.
Yeah.
And then as you do that for between 40 and 45 minutes, and you do that every other day, like 3 or 4 times in a week, you are likely going to have a good, cardiovascular system. And then, of course, if you're hypertensive, whether you're hypertensive or not, that will not do any wrong thing. It will only help, your management of the hypertension.
Okay.
But you are hypertensive, you are running, you are jogging, and you are carrying weights and things like that.
Going to the gym.
That might just be
extreme.
a problem. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners have also learned one or two things. And because of our time, we have to round up right now. So I would love to know, what are your final words for those watching and those listening to us right now, especially as this topic is concerned?
Yeah, my final words to the public is that you must know that hypertension is a silent killer. It doesn't come with any bizarre signs. So the moment you start seeing these symptoms of not being able to sleep well, feeling weak in the morning, having persistent headache, please don't do anything else. Just go to a reliable health center or healthcare facility to get your blood pressure checked. And the moment it is done, if it is high, follow the instructions that you are given.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Again, thank you for honoring this
pleasure.
invitation. Hopefully, when we call on you next time, you're going to oblige us. And thank you too for tuning in, our wonderful listeners. Thank you for tuning in on the show today. It has been very, very wonderful, and I hope that today's episode of Managing Chronic Health Conditions is going to prompt you to even take your health even more serious. Remember, I used to say it, pay attention. Your health can spiral from 0 to 100 in seconds. Every second is delicate when healthcare is concerned. So always pay attention to your healthcare. And remember, health is a journey, not a destination.